The diplomatic courier ship Meridian's Edge hung motionless in the void between stars, its hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts, and adorned with the blue and white flag of the Terran Federation. Captain Valdris Kane stared at the grotesque tableau displayed on the main view screen, his weathered face carved from granite. 4 to 7 human skeletons, bleached white by cosmic radiation, had been arranged with surgical precision into the 13 stripes and star field of Earth's ancient flag. Each bone had been carefully positioned, held in place by some kind of crystalline lattice that glittered against the black backdrop of space. The message was unmistakable. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Lyra Voss, her voice barely audible over the bridge's ambient hum. "The hegemony is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're claiming responsibility." Kane's knuckles went white as he gripped the armrest of his command chair. The Kefir hegemony had been humanity's most aggressive neighbor since first contact 12 years ago, a species of silicon-based predators who viewed biological life as an infestation to be cleansed. But this was an act of pure malice. "Play their transmission," he commanded. The view screen shifted to display a towering Kefir commander, its crystalline carapace reflecting the harsh light of its ship's bridge. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone, soft-fleshed Terrans. "Your criminals served us well as subjects for our anatomical studies. We have learned much about your fragile construction. Consider this a gift and a warning. Withdraw from the Kepler sector, or we will arrange your entire species in such artistic displays." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge like a suffocating blanket. Kane had known some of those prisoners personally. They were convicts, yes, murderers, pirates, traitors, but they were still human. The Terran Federation's experimental prisoner exchange program had been meant as a gesture of goodwill, a way to demonstrate humanity's commitment to justice by allowing alien civilizations to study Earth's worst criminals in exchange for similar access to Kefir lawbreakers. Instead, the hegemony had turned it into a lesson in cruelty. "Sir," said Navigator Rax Denton, his dark eyes reflecting the horrific display, "orders from Terra Central are coming through now." Kane accepted the encrypted data packet with steady hands, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Admiral." Nix Castellan's face appeared on his personal display, her expression grim as winter. "Captain Kane." She began without preamble. "By now you've seen the hegemony's message. What they don't know is that we've been monitoring their communications. This wasn't an isolated incident. Intelligence suggests they've been systematically torturing and experimenting on human prisoners for months. The bone display is just their latest psychological warfare tactic." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "The Federation Council has voted unanimously. We're done negotiating with the Kefir. Operation Gravidigger is now active. Your ship is to rendezvous with Battle Group Prometheus at the edge of hegemony space. We're going to show them exactly what happens when you desecrate human remains." The transmission ended, leaving Kane staring at the floating bones of his fellow humans. Around him, the bridge crew worked with grim efficiency, laying in a course for the rendezvous point. The ship's engines hummed to life, a low thrumming that seemed to echo the rage building in every human heart aboard. Weapons Chief Tobias Marsh looked up from his console, his scarred face reflecting years of combat experience. "Sir, what are your orders regarding the display?" Kane studied the macabre flag one final time, memorizing every detail. Somewhere in that arrangement of bones were the remains of petty criminals and cold-blooded killers, but they had been human. They had deserved better than to become someone else's art project. "We recover every bone," he said quietly, "every single one. They're coming home." As the Meridian's edge turned toward hegemony space, Kane felt something cold and implacable settling in his chest. The Kefir had made their point. Now humanity would make theirs. Battle Group Prometheus assembled like a constellation of death. In the outer reaches of the Arcturus system, 17 ships of the line, their hulls bristling with railguns, plasma cannons, and experimental fusion torpedoes. At their center, the dreadnought Retribution's call loomed like a metal mountain, its massive frame capable of cracking moons. Admiral Castellan's hologram materialized on the bridge of the Meridian's edge, her ice blue eyes surveying the assembled fleet. "Captains, we have new intelligence. Long-range sensors have detected a Kefir research facility in the Vega 7 system. Our sources indicate this is where they conducted their experiments on human prisoners." The tactical display shifted, revealing the crystalline structure orbiting a dying star. The facility was massive, easily the size of Luna, and protected by a network of automated defense platforms. The facility is designated Target Alpha. Castellan continued, but it's not going to be easy. The HFY have reinforced it with elements of their third fleet, at least 40 vessels, including 2 of their Annihilator-class battleships. Captain Yuki Tanaka of the destroyer Wildfire leaned forward in her chair. Admiral, what's our primary objective? Rescue or destruction? Both, Castellan replied without hesitation. Intelligence suggests there may still be human prisoners alive in that facility. We extract them if possible, then we turn that abomination into cosmic dust. The fleet moved out in tight formation, slipping through hyperspace like a school of steel predators. 3 days later, they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Vega 7 system, immediately lighting up their active sensors. What they found made even veteran spacers curse in amazement. The HFY facility wasn't just a research station, it was a monument to systematic cruelty. Vast transparent sections revealed chambers filled with dissection tables, holding cells, and what can only be described as torture implements, floating around the station in neat, organized patterns were more bone displays. Hundreds of human skeletons arranged in geometric patterns like some twisted art gallery. Jesus Christ, whispered someone on the comm channel. Admiral Castellan's voice cut through the horrified silence like a blade. All ships, battle stations, prepare for immediate engagement. They've turned our people into a fucking museum. The HFY response was swift and brutal. Their fleet emerged from behind the facility's bulk, crystalline hulls gleaming like predatory insects. The lead ship, a massive Annihilator-class vessel, broadcast a taunting message. Welcome, soft flesh. We have prepared more displays for your arrival. Open fire, Castellan commanded. The battle erupted in a symphony of destruction. Terran railguns spat tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds, while HFY plasma cannons painted space in lethal auroras. The destroyer Phoenix Rising took a direct hit to her port engine, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. Her captain, Marcus Vance, kept firing even as his ship listed heavily to starboard. The Wildfire ducked beneath the enemy formation, her torpedo tubes blazing. 6 fusion warheads struck a HFY cruiser amidships, cracking its crystalline hull like an eggshell. Alien atmosphere and bodies spilled into vacuum, but the ship kept fighting, its automated systems maintaining fire even as its crew died. Captain K maneuvered the Meridian's edge through the chaos, targeting the smaller defense platforms surrounding the research facility. Each platform he destroyed revealed more horrors, chambers filled with human remains, laboratories where torture had been elevated to science, holding cells where the dying had been kept alive, solely to prolong their suffering. Sir, Navigator, Denton called out over the roar of battle. I'm detecting life signs in Section 7 of the facility. They're human. Kane's heart leaped. Survivors. After all this time, there were actually survivors. Weapons. Concentrate fire on that section's defenses. He ordered. Prepare a boarding party. The battle raged around them as the Meridian's edge closed on the facility. HFY fighters swarmed. Like angry wasps, their crystal hulls refracting laser fire into deadly rainbows. The frigate Hammer of Babylon disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma, taking all hands with her dot, but the Terran forces pressed forward, driven by a fury that transcended mere military discipline. They had seen the bone displays, witnessed the systematic degradation of human dignity. This wasn't just war, it was a reckoning. The Retribution's call targeted one of the Annihilator-class battleships, her massive plasma cannon cycling up to full power. The weapon fired once, sending a bolt of contained starfire across the battlefield. The HFY ship's crystalline armor held for a moment, then shattered like glass. The vessel broke apart in a silent explosion, its death throes visible for millions of kilometers. As the first phase of the battle wound down, Admiral Castellan's voice echoed across the fleet. This is just the beginning. We're going to make them pay for every human life they've taken, every single one. The boarding pods launched from the Meridian's edge like bullets fired from God's own gun, their armored hulls burning through the thin atmosphere surrounding the research facility. Captain Kane led the assault personally, his powered armor servos whining as he checked his weapons one final time. Remember, he transmitted to his team, we going hard and fast. Priority 1 is finding survivors. Priority 2 is documenting everything. Priority 3 is making sure this place never operates again. The pod struck the facility's hull with bone-jarring impacts. Plasma cutters sliced through crystalline walls like hot knives through butter, and the boarding teams poured into the alien structure with weapons raised. What they found inside defied human comprehension. The corridors were lined with display cases containing human organs suspended in luminescent fluid. Each case was meticulously labeled in HFY script, describing the organ's function, its pain response, and its breaking point under various forms of stress. Sergeant Major Elena Vasquez, a 20-year veteran of the Terran Marines, vomited inside her helmet at the sight of a human heart still beating in its container. "Jesus fucking Christ," she gasped, wiping her mouth with a shaking hand. "They're keeping them alive just to watch them suffer." Kane's tactical display showed the facility's layout a sprawling complex of laboratories, holding cells, and what could only be described as amphitheaters where the HFY had apparently gathered to observe their experiments. The life signs Denton had detected were concentrated in the facility's core, protected by multiple layers of security. The team moved deeper into the structure, their boots echoing on floors made from some kind of organic polymer that felt disturbingly like human skin. They encountered their first resistance at a junction leading to the central laboratories. A squad of HFY soldiers in powered armor that gleamed like living jewels. The firefight was brief, but vicious. Terran pulse rifles chattered against crystalline armor, while HFY plasma weapons carved glowing wounds in the corridor walls. Private Jackson took a hit to the chest, his armor cracking like a broken mirror. He kept firing until his rifle ran dry, then drew his combat knife and charged the nearest alien. They found him 30 seconds later, his blade buried to the hilt in a HFY soldier's optical sensor cluster. Both combatants were dead. "Move," Kane shouted, leading his remaining team through the breach. Behind them, explosions echoed through the facility as the naval battle continued. The Meridian's Edge was taking heavy fire, her hull scarred by plasma burns and kinetic impacts. They reached the central laboratory complex just as alarms began wailing throughout the facility. The HFY were preparing to execute their remaining prisoners rather than let them be rescued. The laboratory doors were made of some kind of transparent aluminum composite, allowing the boarding team to see inside. What they witnessed there would haunt them for the rest of their lives. 17 humans were suspended in crystalline matrices, their bodies pierced by countless monitoring devices. Most were barely alive, kept conscious by alien stimulants so the HFY could study their pain responses in real time. The prisoners' eyes were wide with terror and madness, their mouths open in silent screams. One of them was a woman. Kane recognized Dr. Rebecca Holstrom, a convicted war criminal who had been sentenced to the exchange program for her experiments on colonial civilians. Even seeing her like this, tortured beyond all human endurance, filled him with rage. "Breach the door," he ordered. The plasma charges detonated simultaneously, turning the laboratory entrance into molten slag. The boarding team rushed inside, their medical sensors detecting the faint vital signs of the suspended prisoners. "Sir," called Corman Willis, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "They're alive, but barely. The neural implants, they've been keeping them conscious through everything. Some of these people have been awake and aware for months. As the team worked to free the prisoners, their comm systems crackled with upgrades from the ongoing battle. The HFY had called in reinforcements and an entire battle fleet was emerging from hyperspace, their crystalline hulls gleaming like a constellation of malevolent stars. Admiral Castellan's voice cut through the static. "All units, we've got big problems. Enemy reinforcements number at least 60 ships, including what looks like their fleet flagship. This is turning into a full-scale engagement." Through the laboratory's transparent walls, Kane could see the battle raging in space. Above, Terran ships were outnumbered 3-1, their formations breaking apart under the weight of enemy fire. The cruiser Damascus Steel exploded in a ball of superheated plasma, her wreckage spinning away into the void. "Captain," whispered Dr. Holstrom, her voice barely audible through the alien breathing. "Apparatus, they're planning something. The other facilities, there are dozens of them, thousands of humans." Kane's blood ran cold. This wasn't just one research station, it was part of a network. The HFY had been systematically abducting and torturing humans across their entire frontier, turning cruelty into a science. The facility shuddered as enemy fire raked its outer hull. Through the comm system, Kane could hear the Meridian's Edge taking damage. Her captain calling for damage control teams. "Sir," said Sergeant Vasquez, "we need to go. This place is coming apart." But as they prepared to evacuate with the survivors, the laboratory's main display activated, showing a message in perfect English. "Attention humans, Your rescue attempt has provided us with valuable data on your emotional responses to loss. We thank you for this final experiment. The countdown timer that appeared showed 30 seconds to detonation. Move, Kane bellowed, hauling Dr. Holstrom's barely conscious form over his shoulder as the countdown reached 25 seconds. The boarding team had trained for extraction under fire, but not for carrying torture victims whose nervous systems had been systematically destroyed. Over months of experimentation, Sergeant Vasquez took point, her pulse rifle cutting down to HFY soldiers who emerged from a side corridor behind them. The facility's self-destruct sequence was already beginning. Crystalline support beams were cracking. An atmosphere was venting through stress fractures in the outer hull. 15 seconds. Corpsman Willis struggled with a male prisoner whose legs had been surgically removed and replaced with some kind of sensory apparatus. The man was screaming not from pain, but from the electrical stimulation devices that the HFY had embedded in his spinal column. 10 seconds. The boarding pods were too far away. They'd never make it through the collapsing corridors in time. Kane's mind raced through tactical options, each one ending in the same conclusion: they were all going to die. 5 seconds. Brace for impact, he shouted, throwing himself over Dr. Holstrom as the detonation wave reached them. The explosion that followed wasn't the clean nuclear fire of human weapons. HFY demolition charges worked by exciting crystalline matrices at the molecular level, causing them to vibrate apart in a cascade of destruction. The facility didn't just explode, it sang itself to death, emitting frequencies that could shatter both crystal and bone. But the Meridian's Edge had been monitoring the situation. Captain Hendricks, Kane's XO, had anticipated the facility's destruction and positioned the ship's emergency transporters for immediate extraction. The boarding team materialized on the ship's bridge just as the research station became an expanding cloud of glittering debris. Medical teams to the bridge, Hendricks shouted, even as enemy fire raked the ship's hull. Get these people to sick bay, now. Through the main view screen, the full scope of the naval battle became apparent. The Terran fleet was being systematically destroyed. Of the original 17 ships, only 9 remained operational. The HFY had not only reinforced their position, they had turned it into a killing field. Admiral Castellan's flagship, the Retribution's Call, was locked in a brutal duel with the enemy flagship, a massive crystalline dreadnought that looked like a living weapon. Both ships were trading fire at point-blank range, their weapons carving glowing wounds in each other's hulls. Sir, reported the Meridian's Edge's tactical officer, we're detecting massive energy buildup from the enemy flagship. They're charging some kind of super weapon. On the view screen, the HFY dreadnought's entire forward section began to glow with malevolent light. Whatever they were preparing, it was going to be devastating. Admiral Castellan's voice cut through the chaos on the fleet frequency. All ships, emergency tactical shift. Implement Protocol Omega immediately. I repeat, Protocol Omega is now active. Kane felt his blood turn to ice. Protocol Omega was humanity's most desperate tactical doctrine. Strategy so brutal that it had only been theoretical until now. It meant abandoning conventional rules of engagement and employing every weapon in humanity's arsenal, including the ones that violated interstellar law. The first sign of the protocol's implementation came from the destroyer Wildfire. Captain Tanaka had jettisoned her ship's entire missile payload, but these weren't conventional warheads. They were hunter-killer mines, each one equipped with rudimentary AI and programmed to target crystalline hulls specifically. The HFY point defense systems were designed to stop incoming projectiles, not swarms of semi-intelligent weapons that could change course and adapt their attack patterns. The mines spread through the enemy formation like a plague of metal locusts, each one seeking the most vulnerable points in crystalline armor. When they detonated, they didn't just explode, they released clouds of nanoscale assemblers programmed to break down silicon-based materials at the molecular level. HFY ships began to literally dissolve from the inside out, their crystalline hulls crumbling like sandcastles. But the enemy flagship had completed its charging sequence. The weapon that emerged from its forward section wasn't a conventional beam or projectile. It was a focused gravitational wave that could crush matter at the atomic level. The beam struck the Retribution's Call amidships and Admiral Castellan's flagship simply ceased. Not destroyed, not vaporized, erased. Where a million-ton dreadnought had been, there was now only empty space. The fleet frequency fell silent. In that moment of stunned grief, every human in the battle group felt the same cold fury that had driven their species to dominate there. home ruled through cunning, persistence, and calculated brutality. Captain Hendricks took tactical command, his voice steady despite the horror they'd all witnessed. All ships, converge on the enemy flagship, close to minimum range and prepare for ramming speed. We're going to show these crystal fuckers what humans do when they take our people. The remaining Terran ships formed up in a tight formation, their hulls already scarred by battle damage. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing a weapon that could erase them from existence. But they were human, and humans, when cornered, became something else entirely. "Sir," whispered Dr. Holstrom from her medical gurney, her eyes bright with chemically induced clarity. "The other facilities, I know where they are, all of them." King looked down at the broken woman, seeing something in her expression that chilled him to the bone. She wasn't just a victim anymore, she was a weapon, and she was ready to be used. The Terran fleet's charge toward the HFY flagship was less a tactical maneuver than a controlled descent into madness. 9 ships against 60, with no hope of conventional victory and every intention of taking as many enemies with them as possible. The Meridian's Edge led the formation, her hull already glowing from plasma impacts. Captain Kane stood on the bridge, his uniform torn and bloodied from the boarding action, watching as the enemy formation moved to intercept them. "All ships," he transmitted, "implement Dr. Holstrom's intelligence package. Targeting data is being distributed now." The intelligence package was a revelation of horror. Dr. Holstrom, during her months of torture, had been forced to witness the HFY's planning sessions. She knew the locations of 17 other research facilities, each one filled with human prisoners. More importantly, she knew the crystalline frequency that would cause a cascade failure in their weapons systems. The destroyer Wildfire broke from formation first, diving toward a cluster of enemy cruisers. Captain Tanaka had reconfigured her ship's main sensor array to broadcast the resonance frequency, turning her vessel into a massive tuning fork. The effect on the HFY ships was immediate and catastrophic. Their crystalline hulls began to vibrate apart, shedding armor plating like scales from a dying fish. But the tactic came at a price. The Wildfire had to get within 2 kilometers of her targets to be effective, well within their defensive perimeter. HFY fighters swarmed over the destroyer like angry wasps, their plasma cannons carving glowing wounds in her hull. Captain Tanaka kept broadcasting the lethal frequency, even as her ship disintegrated around her. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, her tactical officer reported with professional calm. "Life support failing. Reactor containment at 60%. Maintain frequency broadcast," Tanaka ordered, her hands white-knuckled on her command chair's armrests. "Make them pay for every meter." The Wildfire exploded 3 minutes later, taking for HFY cruisers with her. Her sacrifice had bought the rest of the fleet precious time to close the distance. The frigate Hammer of Destiny employed a different strategy. Her captain, Commander Naya Okafor, had jettisoned everything non-essential from her ship lifeboats, auxiliary equipment, even the crew's personal belongings to make room for a single massive warhead. Not nuclear, not a time matter, but something far worse, a gravitational collapse bomb that would create a temporary black hole. Okafor guided her ship into the heart of the enemy formation, her crew singing battle hymns as HFY fire stripped away armor and hull plating. The frigate's bridge was exposed to vacuum, her crew operating in emergency suits as plasma bolts and crystal shards filled the air around them. "Arming the device," announced Weapons Officer Dmitry Kozlov, his voice steady despite the fact that he was slowly bleeding to death from a crystal shard embedded in his chest. 30 seconds to detonation. The HFY recognized the threat too late. The Hammer of Destiny was already deep within their formation, her hull superheated and glowing like a falling star. When the gravitational weapon detonated, it created a sphere of twisted space-time that consumed everything within a 10-kilometer radius. 12 HFY ships vanished into the artificial singularity, their crystalline hulls stretched into impossible geometries before disappearing beyond the event horizon. The Hammer of Destiny was gone too, along with her crew of 43, but they had carved a hole in the enemy formation that the remaining Terran ships could exploit. The heavy cruiser Iron Discipline charged through the gap, her captain, Elena Vasquez's sister Maria, screaming orders in 3 languages as her ship's weapons blazed. The cruiser had been modified with experimental plasma cannons that could overload at any moment. But Maria didn't care. She had seen the bone displays, witnessed the torture chambers, and nothing mattered now except making the HFY pay. "Port, battery, target their command ship," she shouted over the roar of battle. The iron discipline lasted 12 minutes against concentrated enemy fire, her weapons blazing until the very moment her power core breached containment. The explosion was visible from 3-star systems away, a brief new star that illuminated the battlefield in harsh white light dot by the time the glare faded. Only for Terran ships remain operational: the Meridian's Edge, the light cruiser Defiant Storm, the destroyer Phoenix Rising, and the assault carrier Vengeful Mother. They faced 37 HFY vessels, including the massive flagship. With its reality-erasing weapon, Captain Kane opened a channel to the surviving ships. "Gentlemen, ladies, it's been an honor. Dr. Holstrom's data indicates that the enemy flagship's gravitational weapon has a 15-minute recharge cycle. We have 12 minutes to make this count." The four ships spread into a diamond formation, their weapons synchronized to create overlapping fields of fire. They had one advantage: the nanoscale assemblers from the earlier mine attack were still eating away at HFY hulls, creating weak points that could be exploited. The Defiant Storm targeted the flagship's weapon ray, her concentrated fire carving chunks of crystalline armor away from the massive structure. Captain Rex Morrison, a veteran of the Centauri Wars, had configured his ship's weapons for maximum penetration rather than area effect. "I could see their power conduits," he reported, his voice tight with concentration. "They're using some kind of quantum entanglement system to channel energy from their reactor to the weapon. If we can sever those connections..." He never finished the sentence. A HFY plasma bolt struck the Defiant Storm's bridge, instantly vaporizing Captain Morrison and his command crew. But his ship kept fighting, her automated systems maintaining fire even as secondary explosions tore through her hull. The Phoenix Rising, badly damaged from the earlier battle, used her remaining momentum to ram a HFY cruiser. The collision was catastrophic for both ships, but it opened another gap in the enemy formation. Only the Meridian's Edge and the Vengeful Mother remained, facing the full might of the HFY fleet. The odds were impossible, the situation desperate, and the enemy flagship's weapon was almost ready to fire again. But Captain Kane had one last card to play. Dr. Holstrom, strapped to a medical gurney on the bridge, was smiling with the terrible clarity of someone who had stared into the abyss and found purpose in its depths. "Captain," she whispered, "I know how to turn their own weapon against them." Dr. Rebecca Holstrom's smile was the most terrifying thing Captain Kane had ever seen. Strapped to her medical gurney, her body broken by months of HFY experimentation, she looked like a corpse that had forgotten it was dead. But her eyes burned with an intelligence that transcended her physical condition. "The gravitational weapon," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sounds of battle raging around the Meridian's Edge. "It's not just a weapon, it's a dimensional anchor. The HFY use it to stabilize their hyperspace jumps. If we can reverse the polarity while it's charging, what happens?" Kane demanded, ducking as another plasma bolt struck the ship's hull. "It creates a hyperspace cascade. Every ship within 1,000 kilometers gets pulled into interdimensional space, including us." Kane stared at her. "That's suicide." "No," Holstrom replied, her broken fingers twitching against the gurney's restraints. "That's justice. The HFY had been using captured humans to test their dimensional technology. I know how to survive the transition. They don't." The enemy flagship's weapon ray was beginning to glow again, building toward another reality-erasing discharge. Around them, the surviving HFY ships were closing in, their crystalline hulls glittering like predatory insects. Captain Torres of the assault carrier Vengeful Mother broke radio silence. "Kane, whatever you're planning, do it fast. I'm down to emergency power and my crew is fighting boarding parties in the cargo bays." Through the Meridian's Edge's tactical display, Kane could see Torres' ship being systematically carved apart by HFY fighters. The assault carrier's armor was peeling away in molten chunks, exposing the corridors where human Marines were fighting hand-to-hand combat against crystalline soldiers. "Dr. Holstrom," Kane said quietly, "if we do this, how many of our people survive on this ship? Maybe 20%. On the Vengeful Mother, none. But every human in those other research facilities lives. Every prisoner the HFY have taken, every person they plan to torture, they all get to go home." King closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the bone displays floating in space, the torture chambers, the systematic cruelty that had driven his species to this point. When he opened them again, his decision was made. Engineering. He called out, "Prepare to invert our gravitational generators. I want them synchronized with the enemy flagship's weapon cycle." "Sir, replied Chief Engineer Yuki Nakamura, her voice tight with controlled terror. That's going to tear the ship apart. The gravitational stress alone. Do it anyway. Keen interrupted. All hands. Prepare for dimensional transition. This is not a drill. The Meridian's edge turned toward the enemy flagship, her engines straining against the gravitational forces that were already beginning to distort space around them. The HFY weapon was reaching critical charge, its glow visible even through the ship's radiation shielding. Dr. Holstrom began reciting coordinates in a voice that carried across the bridge. Despite its weakness, dimensional anchor at coordinates to 147 Mark 83, polarity inversion on my mark. Everyone needs to be touching something metal. When the cascade begins, the human nervous system can survive the transition. If it's properly grounded, the crew grabbed onto whatever metal surfaces they could find, handrails, equipment housings, even the steel framework beneath the deck plating. On the view screen, the HFY flagship loomed like a crystalline cathedral, its weapon array building toward a discharge that would erase them from existence. 10 seconds, Holstrom counted. Down. 9, 8, 7, the enemy weapon fired. Now, Holstrom screamed. Chief Engineer Nakamura triggered the gravitational inversion. Just as the reality-erasing beam reached them, instead of being annihilated, the Meridian's edge became the focal point of a dimensional rift that tore a hole in space-time itself. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The HFY flagship, caught in the gravitational cascade, began to stretch and distort as competing forces pulled it in multiple directions simultaneously. Its crystalline hull, designed to withstand conventional weapons, cracked like an eggshell under the stress of interdimensional forces. But the cascade was spreading. Every ship within 1,000 kilometers, Terran and HFY alike, was being pulled into the dimensional rift. The vengeful mother disappeared first, her hull elongating, impossibly before vanishing into twisted space. Then the enemy cruisers began to follow, their cruise screams Doppler shifting into silence as they fell between dimensions. Captain Kane felt the transition like ice water in his veins. The Meridian's edge was falling through layers of reality, her hull groaning under stresses that shouldn't exist. Around him, crew members who hadn't found proper grounding were simply fading, their molecular structure unable to maintain coherence during the dimensional shift. Navigator Denton was the first to go, his body becoming transparent before dissolving into component atoms. Then Weapons Chief Marsh, his scarred face, expressing surprise rather than fear as he ceased to exist. The ship's lights flickered between frequencies that human eyes weren't designed to see. The air itself seemed to thicken, becoming a liquid that carried sound and meaning in ways that defied physics. Through it all, Dr. Holstrom's voice guided them. Hold on. The cascade is almost complete. The HFY ships are being torn apart there. Crystalline structure can't survive dimensional flux. On the distorted view screen, Kane could see the enemy flagship breaking apart in slow motion, its massive bulk separating into component crystals that scattered across multiple dimensional planes. The other HFY vessels were suffering similar fates, their crew's death screams echoing across frequencies that touched the human soul directly. Then, suddenly, space snapped back to normal. The Meridian's edge hung in empty space, her hull, scarred and smoking, but intact. Of the 63 HFY ships that had entered the battle, none remained. They had been scattered across dimensional space, their crystalline hulls unable to maintain coherence during the transition. Damage report. King called out weakly, his voice hoarse from screaming. The response came from all over the ship, delivered by the few crew members who had survived the dimensional transition. Out of the Meridian's Edge's original complement of 312, only 67 remained. The others had been lost either to battle damage or to the cascade itself. Hull integrity at 40%, reported Acting Chief Engineer Petty Officer Kim Sandos, her voice shaking. We've got atmosphere leaks on 8 decks, and the reactor is running on backup containment. Communications are down, added the surviving comm officer. But I'm detecting automated distress beacons, lots of them. Kane turned to Dr. Holstrom, who was somehow still conscious despite everything her body had endured. Doctor, the other facilities, are they still there? She nodded weakly. The dimensional cascade created a resonance effect. Every HFY installation using their gravitational technology just stopped working. Their containment fields, their torture devices, their dimensional locks, all of it failed simultaneously. For the first time in months, Dr. Rebecca Holstrom smiled without madness behind her eyes. 6 months later, Captain Valdres Kane stood in the memorial hall aboard Terra Station, staring at a wall that bore the names of 847 Terran spacers who had died in what historians were already calling the Bone Flag Incident. The wall was made of polished black stone, each name etched in silver letters that caught the light like distant stars. Behind him, the soft murmur of conversation filled the hall as families, fellow officers, and government officials paid their respects. Today marked the official end of the HFY conflict and the beginning of humanity's expansion into what had once been hegemony space. Captain Kane. He turned to find Dr. Rebecca Holstrom approaching, walking slowly, but under her own power. The medical nanites had done their work well, repairing the worst of the damage the HFY had inflicted on her nervous system. She would never be completely whole again, but she was alive, and that was more than anyone had expected. Doctor, he acknowledged with a nod. How are you feeling? Like someone who's been given a second chance, she replied, her voice stronger than it had been on that final, desperate day aboard the Meridian's edge. I wanted to thank you again, Captain, for coming back for us. Kane studied her face, seeing something there that hadn't been present during her trial years ago. The arrogance was gone, burned away by months of suffering. What remained was harder to define, perhaps wisdom, perhaps simply the knowledge of what it meant to be human when everything else had been stripped away. The rescue fleets found them all, didn't they? He asked. Holstrom nodded. 2,847 human prisoners, recovered from 18 different facilities. Some of them, she paused, her hands trembling slightly. Some had been there for years. The HFY had been taking our people longer than we realized. The dimensional cascade had done more than destroy the enemy fleet by disrupting the gravitational technology that the HFY used to maintain their research facilities. It had caused a systematic failure across their entire network of torture installations. Containment fields had collapsed, door locks had failed, and automated defense systems had simply stopped functioning. The rescued prisoners had been found by Terran search and rescue teams, many of them huddled together in the ruins of their former prisons, hardly daring to believe that their ordeal was over. The stories they told had solidified humanity's resolve to never again allow such systematic cruelty to go unpunished. Admiral Castellan's replacement wants to offer you a promotion, Kane said quietly. Fleet captain, with your own battle group. Holstrom laughed, a sound that would have been bitter months ago, but now carried notes of genuine amusement. Do you think that's wise, Captain, giving a convicted war criminal her own fleet? I think, Kane replied carefully, that you understand the cost of cruelty better than most, and understanding that cost is what makes someone qualified to prevent it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as other visitors moved through the memorial hall. Near the far wall, Kane could see Navigator Denton's widow placing flowers beneath his name. She had their young son, with her, a boy, who would grow up knowing that his father had died to prevent humanity's darkest impulses from going unchallenged. The HFY survivors, Holstrom said eventually, the ones who weren't aboard ships during the cascade. What's being done with them? Prisoner exchanges, Kane replied. They're being treated according to Terran military law better than they treated our people, but not by much. Some are being held for war crimes trials. Others are being used to establish communications with whatever government structures remain in their space and the territories they left behind. Colonization fleets are already moving in. The Defense Council estimates that former hegemony space could support 50 million new settlers within a decade. Kane's expression darkened slightly. Of course, we're finding more research facilities every month, empty ones, thankfully. But the evidence of what they were doing, he didn't need to finish. Both of them had seen the reports, had read the testimonies of survivors who described systematic programs of torture that had been elevated to scientific methodology. The HFY hadn't just been cruel, they had been comprehensively, methodically evil in ways that challenged human understanding. There's something else, Holstrom said, her voice dropping to a whisper, something I never told the debriefers. During the final experiments, before you arrived, the HFY were preparing to broadcast the results of their research to other species. They wanted to teach the galaxy how to break human will, how to systematically destroy human dignity. Kane felt a chill run down his spine. Did they succeed? No, Holstrom replied firmly. The cascade destroyed their research networks before they could transmit anything. But Captain, there are other species out there. Who might be interested in that kind of information? Species who see humanity's expansion and want to find ways to stop us. Then we'll have to make sure they understand the consequences, Kane said quietly. What happened to the HFY wasn't an aberration, it was a promise. Any species that tries to systematically torture humans will face the same fate. Near the Memorial Wall Center, a new addition had been installed just that morning, a holographic display showing the original bone flag that had started everything. But now it was surrounded by images of the survivors, the rescued prisoners, and the new colonies being established in former hegemony space. Below the display, words were etched in the same silver letters used for the names of the dead. They took our prisoners and sent back bones arranged in the shape of our flag. We sent back silence where their civilization used to be. Dr. Holstrom read the inscription and nodded slowly. It's not quite accurate. You know, we didn't send back silence. No. Keen asked. No. She replied, her eyes reflecting the memorial's soft lighting. We sent back a lesson, and lessons, Captain, tend to echo as they left the memorial hall together. Kane thought about the expansion fleets already moving into former HFY space, about the new colonies that would grow where torture facilities had once operated, about the children who would be born free because others had been willing to pay the ultimate price. For that freedom, the HFY had intended their bone flag as a message of intimidation, a demonstration of their power over human life and dignity. Instead, they had awakened something in humanity that was far more dangerous than they could have imagined, not just the capacity for violence, but the willingness to pay any price to protect their own. In the end, that had made all the difference. The bones had been recovered, every single one, and given proper burial on worlds that would remember what had happened here. The flag they had been arranged to represent now flew over 17 new colonies, each one a testament to humanity's refusal to be broken by cruelty. And in the vast darkness between stars, other civilizations watched and learned, understanding from